Rite of Passage, the podcast with Giabra Martin.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the episode. We are here with author and musician Steve McClain. How are you today?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Very well, very well. Day's flying by, but we're making
Mm-hmm.
progress here. So a little bit of backstory, because this is kind of one of those small world kind of things. It's funny. So
Yes.
you actually work with my wife,
Yes.
and she was telling me like a while back, because I've been writing, chasing after this dream. She was like, one of my coworkers has a book and, just found a publisher. It's coming out and really exciting. Like, I'd love for you to meet this person. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool, right? Because at that time I wasn't on TikTok or anything. I didn't know any other authors. So I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to like, know someone locally who's also, on this journey, right? And then we met kind of randomly about 2 weeks ago at an in-person book event in Smyrna, Tennessee.
Right.
And I was like looking at your book, looking at your table, and I was like, wait a second, I'm having this like deja vu. Like there's something really familiar. I was like, wait, do you work at FBAA? And then I was like, oh my God, you work with my wife, Tina. And it was just one of these kind of aha moment, epiphany things. So that was kind of funny. It was good seeing you
Yeah.
there. That was
And I ended up there by way of I was just looking to get my books in different shops around here and went out to Lindsay's.
right,
Um, oh gosh, probably 3 or 4 months ago. I mean, she
right, like
was
recent.
might even been further than that because she was
Hmm.
just starting to put. I don't think the AuthorCon thing was even a thing that she was starting to put together. So it must have been a while ago. And then
Yeah.
got involved with that. So that's how I ended up there.
Oh, very cool. I gotta start connecting with more of the local stores. Like I kind of met Lindsay by accident on TikTok. And then I was like, wait a second, you're right down the road. And I was like, oh, let me just pop in. And she's a mover and a shaker. Like she, shout out to Lindsay at the Spine Bookshop in Smyrna. She makes things happen.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, she put together that event. She kind of asked me to MC at the last minute. Like I wasn't really supposed to be there. So it was kind of funny that I ended up there. It's funny you ended up there. And I was like, wait a second. Like, oh, I kind of know you without knowing you. It's like my wife, was like, tell me about it. I was like, oh, this is all very familiar here. So you're a recent author but you've been a lifelong musician.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the music. And I just want to say, as a backstory, a lot of these interviews I talk to authors, a lot of them are very, very inspired by music. Like the books they're writing are fueled by music, and it's like we all want to be rock stars. We all feel that musical connection, but we don't. It's just not our art form. It's we don't have the hands for it or something, right? Um, but it's you're actually the first person I've met who is both author and
Cool.
musician.
Cool.
So tell me a bit about your music.
Where should we start?
Right? Bit
Early
broad.
on, I mean, it's not any. Right now, I'm doing more teaching than anything.
Mhm.
But I've been involved in a number of different projects. I mean, I don't know life without it, honestly. I mean, I started guitar lessons at 7
Wow.
and taught myself. I studied with the same teacher for 5 years from 7 until got to a point where she actually, two things happened. She had a child and was going to stop teaching. She also said, she goes, I can't teach you anything else. She goes, we're just jamming. So I ended up, which was really cool for me at the age, I ended up taking over a few of her students when she
No
gave up
kidding.
teaching, at like, 13 years old, which was pretty cool for me.
Wow.
Played in a bunch of rock bands, high school. Actually played. I was 14 years old and playing in a working rock band with um, the man who would become my father-in-law later in life. And
Interesting.
yeah, and so then I mean later played coffee. I used to do coffee house things in Northeast Ohio for a long time,
Mm,
and then finally moving to Nashville, things really change after that, and your opportunities certainly open up. And
right.
fast forward to the future in 2019, and I'm on stage at Ryman Auditorium.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, the rhyme. I still got to go over to the Ryman. I know. I mean, it's so historic and just beautiful. I mean, it's just wonderful. And I know, like FBAA, every other year they do a big performance there. I still have to get over there. But I was going to ask you where you're from originally. So Ohio area.
Northeast Ohio, yeah, but basically between Akron and Youngstown.
Okay.
And for anybody who's not familiar with that geography, it's basically about 40 minutes south of Cleveland.
Yeah. And about Nashville, we kind of moved here for similar reasons. So Tina has always been involved in music, and that's just been like I mean, there's no untangling her and music. I mean, it's like just a part of her soul, her identity, all these things, like since she was a little girl. And I heard someone say an interesting thing about Nashville. Obviously, it's changing very rapidly right now, but they said that Nashville is the largest gathering of artists in human history.
Hmm.
And I mean,
Interesting.
I think they're correct. I mean, it's just like you take the musicians, the painters, the filmmakers. I mean, just so many artists are coming here, flocking here. And I mean, there's incredible talent, running around this area. I mean, it's actually very astonishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Movie industry, I mean, it started, I'm not that familiar with it. I was involved in a few projects, but
Mhm.
I know several years ago they started shooting a lot of films here because it was just cheaper, you
Right.
know, and there was a large number of people were moving to the area. So I was involved in just background acting extras, you know. I
Yeah.
was in a movie called Country Strong with Gwyneth Paltrow and Tim McGraw. And
Nice.
then I was on background actor in the series Nashville that aired. I don't know how long that aired. I don't even think I ever saw it, but I kind of dip
I
my toes in the water of that kind of thing. It's fun, but it's a lot of time of it's a lot of sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah, and I'm sure like the extras, they can't really pay everyone that much, right? It's like probably like jury duty. Like you spend the whole day and here's your $40 in a sandwich or something,
You're not far off.
Oh God. But yeah, I'd love to because like obviously with the books, like the dream of most writers is like your book is going to become a movie. And I was like, we're kind of in an interesting city. I mean, there's a lot of independent filmmakers, a lot of people who'd like to be actors and actresses. I mean, there's talent running around all over here,
Yeah.
but it's just more like getting with the right people. And I need to find someone like Lindsay who's in like the film industry, like someone who's very energetic, right? Who just, can just weave this web of all these people and put all the talent together. But
Yeah.
I don't know, it might be something I explore coming up.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your book. Do you have a copy with you?
I do right here.
Wonderful, wonderful.
You can see that
Awesome.
well
Can see
enough.
that very well.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's dig into your book. I know a little bit about it, but for everyone listening,
Sure.
what is the premise?
This is a memoir that when it began, I really had no idea what I was doing. What I had nothing. It was just a matter. All right, let's back up even further than that. So my mother had multiple sclerosis, MS. If anyone's not familiar with that, it's an autoimmune disorder, and basically parts of your brain, the protective covering over the nerves gets kind of eaten away over time, and there's no cure for it. Then at the time that she was diagnosed in the early 1970s, there was no treatment for it, and really you were just told we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I grew up with her with that disease, and my parents divorced, and I ended up going with my mother, and I ended up basically being her caregiver for a long time. I mean, caregiver in the sense that if she needed assistance walking, I was that assistance. I'd push her wheelchair when she ended up in a chair. I did what I needed to do to to kind of take care of her. And just fast forward, I mean, this progressed again to the point. There's no real treatment. She had actually gotten too far along for any of the current treatments that came about in the 1990s to really do anything. It was just too advanced.
Yeah.
Leaving out a lot of the details, 2010 she died, and not long after I realized it's like there's a lot of things that these memories are going to slip away pretty quickly if I don't kind of record them.
Right.
So I just kind of I wouldn't really call it journaling. I was just writing. I was just writing. It was more of a therapeutic kind of thing, and
Yeah.
I thought, you know what, this is really kind of starting to take shape, and maybe I write something that's because a lot of people would ask me what it was like growing up with a parent with a disability. I'm like, they would ask me, well, that must have been hard. That must have been very difficult. I'm like, that's just I didn't know any different. So
Right. That's just what it was. So
right.
like, yeah.
So it came to my realizations like, well, maybe it'd be interesting to write what it's like to grow up with a parent with a disability. So I started doing that,
Yeah.
and it started turning into I was writing a little bit more about myself than I realized I was or that I ever intended to. And I
Yeah.
had I'm part of the story too, right? So I have a writing friend, and I was kind of talking to her about this, and she says, well, maybe this is your story too. I said, all right. I never really thought about that way, but I continued on with that in mind.
Yeah.
My story growing up with a parent with a disability, along with telling her story.
Right, right.
And I just didn't have a schedule. I just wrote when I felt inspired. I just dabbled here, and literally, I mean, I'm talking 5 or 6 years, of just messing with this back and forth.
Right.
And fast forward, beyond that, I was diagnosed myself with MS in 2015 in the middle of writing the book.
Of course, right.
And honestly, my first thought was, well, I've got a hell of an ending for this.
Yeah.
Honestly, and the last chapter in a book is about my diagnosis and everything and I literally, just like music, I don't know life without MS. Never will.
Right. That gave me chills a little bit. Like you didn't mention it until like the very last paragraph, right? It's like for the reader, you take them on this whole journey, and then it's like,
The
well, and here we are.
Yeah, well, the very last
Or,
chapter.
the very last chapter. Sorry.
Yeah, you're okay.
Oh, it's very powerful, and I'm sorry to hear all that. When we were talking at the event, you were explaining to me that everyone's experience with MS is different, and it has to do with your nerves are they're very long going from your brain down to your extremities, and it basically depends on where the myelin sheath, which is the protective coating, kind of gets attacked. So everyone's experience with MS is going to be different. They're going to have different symptoms.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you about your mom. So like I have a friend whose mom has MS, and obviously this is like today, so there's more treatment. It feels like she has kind of more like good seasons and bad seasons.
Yeah.
And then versus like, my grandma had dementia, and it was just like every week she was kind of just slipping a little more. What was it like, for your mom?
Some of her first symptoms, and I write about this in the book because I had asked her to write some things for me for a speech class when I was an undergraduate of what her experience with MS was like.
Nice.
And she had her first symptoms. Honestly, she was 19 when she had her first symptoms, and it
No
was
kidding.
just numbness in her legs, and she just knew that something was off, something wasn't right.
Right.
And then I think early on she went blind, I think in her left eye for like a month or so, and that's one of the symptoms of MS. Oftentimes is blindness. Some
Wow.
can be temporary, but she went blind in her left eye. Vision came back, and then some time had passed, and she went blind again.
Right.
But what I mainly remember was, well, she had numbness in her fingertips, and that
Okay.
once she experienced that, she said that never ever went away. Like your hands asleep, that kind of thing.
Right. But that was permanent. That wasn't good days and bad days. It was
No,
just,
no.
it was there. And then
Yeah,
this is normal now. This is life.
yeah. And I do remember her especially when I was in high school. There would be days when she was still working, and she'd come home from work and she would just walk across the room she'd go, yep. She goes, I feel really good today. Today's a good day. But then other days when she would have what they call them flare-ups,
Hmm.
she'd spend the day in bed and wouldn't have the energy to get out of bed or do anything.
Right.
And there's a number of different factors. I mean, heat is one of the factors that can really affect people with MS. I mean,
In a positive way, or like a bad, like being in a tropical place, good for MS or
no. Well,
exacerbates?
this is the upside down part about it. Is MS is very rare, practically unknown in the southern hemisphere,
Interesting.
and the heat. Usually someone who has MS is very impacted by heat. Like it'll exacerbate their symptoms. Okay.
Really?
So with the geographic nature of it, researchers really believe that there's a significant portion of this that has to do with the lack of vitamin D.
Okay.
So it's very prominent in colder climates, higher latitudes, basically unknown in Latin America and sub-Saharan Africa, but prominent in Europe, Western Europe, and North America.
That would definitely point toward the vitamin D thing.
Hmm.
And then even like a genetic thing amongst like European descendants
Yeah.
versus other cultures. Oh, that's so interesting. God, we had one very, very interesting conversation at the event. You were telling me about the nursing students
Hmm.
who had read your book.
Hmm.
And I had, a whole discussion with Tina about that. And you and I had talked about it. And, the backstory, like when my wife and I talk about history, like I love history. She couldn't connect in school because it was always like dates and places. But then when you tell a very human story about the people, suddenly, it's like, it's so profound and interesting. Like, what was the experience of the people who were there? Um, so yeah, you were telling me like a similar thing about the nurses.
Yeah.
If you want to go on a little riff about that.
Sure. For the last couple, I think this semester will be my third semester speaking to I think that's the graduating, class at Columbia State where I teach at with the nursing students there. When they cover autoimmune disorders, I know a couple of the professors there, and ask if I'd gladly come in and talk to the class about my book and the experience.
Right.
And I just basically tell them my story and what it was like with MS, what my mother's experiences were, what research I've kind of done because it's something that I'm interested in as a geographer and
Yeah.
as a patient as well, just because there is I'm a geography instructor if we didn't mention that, but there is a geographic factor to this in that higher latitudes, colder climates, whatever the European descent,
Yeah.
that's the key demographic there. But yeah, I've had responses from a number of students when I spoke to these classes, they said that they got so much out of it because they were getting not just textbook understanding of this is what it's actually like to deal with this disease. And
Right.
as you mentioned, no two MS patients are the same. And one of the things that we often get from people is like, but you don't look sick. But you don't look like you have it. It's like, no, we don't. Everybody. There's plenty of people who there is no outward indication, not even a balance issue, not even a nothing that they actually have MS. You can be absolutely symptom free and still have it.
Yeah. That's so interesting to me. Yeah, we had talked yeah, about the nursing league. So I have during the day I have a legal proofreading business. So I read a lot of like medical malpractice transcripts and things. And the doctors never remember the patients. And it's because like the interactions are so brief, right? I mean, the doctors are pushed to the limit with like 12-hour shifts and seeing as many people as possible. And so it's kind of like, I don't know, like I think it can be so easy to get disconnected from the human experience of something, right? I mean, reading about different things people are going through and you're reading about the symptoms and it's all abstract and it's impersonal. But I feel like having that personal connection, with the nurses, like nurse to patient, doctor to patient, to be like, okay, what is it like for the people going through this, right? I feel like that can only benefit them in their field, is not getting disconnected from like what brought them there in the first place, which is serving, you know, real people who are suffering and trying to be happy and you
Sure.
know, yeah. So I think it's an amazing thing to do. I think there's a lot I want to pick your brain about. Okay, so I did see on your website though that yeah, you're a geography teacher,
Yeah.
kind of jack of all trades, right? Like musician, author, geography teacher.
I guess. Yeah.
So tell me about the geography because you were saying music has been a part of your life forever. Like how then, where does the fascination with geography come in?
That's a good question. So I am a non-traditional student. I didn't start college till I was 25.
Nice. Okay.
Paid my own way undergrad
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
decided I thought I wanted to be a music ed major. Okay.
Right.
And I got into taking my LER, my liberal education requirements,
Mhm.
and found myself, I think I'm more interested in like history and social studies and that kind of thing than music. I don't really see because you're going to go into music education. It's just not. It's like this isn't attractive to me any longer. I
Yeah.
think I'm interested in more things. So I decided to switch over to secondary ed, social studies.
Mm.
And then I got into my first geography course for the requirements for that. And I'm like, you know what? I think this is what I'm really interested in is geography as a whole. I decided it's like, I think I want to teach geography at the college level. And I
Nice.
was under the false impression that I needed an education degree. And I went to talk to one of my professors and she says, no, you don't. You just need a master's at least. And that day I went and changed my major from a education major to geography major.
Right. Like we
And
don't have to redirect everything. We just make this shift and we're on the path, right? I mean,
yeah, and one of the reasons that geography attracted me so much is that anything can be studied in the discipline of geography because everything has a place.
okay.
And I ended up being the first I ended up writing the first master's thesis at Kent State Geography with a music theme.
With a music theme.
Yep.
Let's dig into that. Tell me
Okay.
about that.
So my thesis title was "Ain't That America: The Influence and Evocation of Place in the Music of Midwestern Songwriters."
Okay.
I took three songwriters, two of them you've probably never heard of before. John Mellencamp, most people know him as John Cougar, right? And John Hyatt, who was originally from Indiana, who moved to Nashville probably in the early 1970s, but he's had quite a career of his own, but he's written a lot of songs for other people.
Okay.
And then regionally in Northeast Ohio, Michael Stanley, he is our royalty. He's a local guy who never really made it big, but I mean, there's Michael Stanley, literally. I mean, he died a few years back, but he's an incredible regional artist.
Nice. Hometown hero.
All three of these guys use place in their music. You can go back to Mellencamp and talk about small house or pig houses, small town, all this stuff about rural environments. And I wrote the thesis. I did this is the early days of message boards on the internet, and I would post message questions on the message boards on the fan sites. How does X's music? What role does place play to you, and how do they convey it, and this and that? It's been so long since I even looked at it. I have a hard time recall it. I wasn't prepared for this. But it basically broke down those three artists and some of their selective musics. I did a discography on each one. And I wrote about how the role that place influenced their music and their careers, and argued that had they been from somewhere else, these artists wouldn't exist in the way that they are, because place was so important to the creation of their art.
Interesting. And there is a trend there, and I don't know what it is, if it's like the actual environment and landscape influences the art, or just that when artists start to gather there, they play off each other in the shared experience. So, like, for example, I think of like I love Nirvana and Alice in Chains. All that whole grunge thing came out of Seattle for some reason, right? And then Tina and I grew up in the Chicago area, huge like blues scene, like the blues guitarists getting together in Chicago, and like, these different clubs and bars and things. And I always kind of wondered, like, why did they gather where they gathered, or how did they decide Nashville, right, would be this country music hub?
Mm-hmm.
What is it about the landscape, or just a couple people start going there, but like suddenly it's understood that if you're this kind of musician, there's a city that,
Sure.
your dreams are possible.
Yeah. I admittedly don't know as much about the history of Nashville as far as it being a country music hub, but it really has, going back to the early days of WSM, the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, they had such powerful transmitter to broadcast with such great distances, and this is what drew so many people to the location.
They just like heard the call and just started walking that way. Yeah.
Well, it's a play. I mean, if you want to interact, I mean, this is the thing, and there's nothing. This because why innovation comes out of cities. It's not that people in cities are any smarter or any than the people in the rural areas. There's more ideas being bounced off of each other.
Right.
So with Seattle being, the grunge, there was no such thing as the Seattle sound. People used to talk about that all the time. The Seattle Nirvana and Pearl Jam did not sound alike. Soundgarden didn't sound like, and they shared a place, but they didn't share a sound.
And a general genre, but music is all very different. But I mean, I guess what they shared is maybe an audience member would like all of them at the same time, basically.
Yes.
Like they're like, hey, I'm kind of fans of all of these, but they're all very different. They all have their place in my little world as a listener,
Sure. And it was an energy of what was the movement that was going on at the time. Because I mean, this was a big response to the death of hair metal and the excess and just, I don't even know what the word is, of the 1980s that just ran its course. It's like, we can't do this anymore. It's just it's comical,
Yeah, like sometimes I just put on Jukebox Hero just for fun, and it still gets me, but it is ridiculous. The whole the whole 80s hair metal was preposterous and a lot of fun at the same time.
It was fun for a while. It definitely was fun for a while.
It was like that disco never dies, and it's like 1980. It's like, all right, disco, we're done with this. Yeah. But that is interesting. Like, why Seattle? Because I mean, it felt like they all popped up at the same time, and it was just like suddenly Seattle is just this hub, like kind of seemingly out of nowhere. And maybe that's just because, without me living there, growing up around it,
Actually,
Um,
I can grab a book and show you something.
let's do it. Let's do it.
Shall I pause my camera here?
No, you're good.
Okay, you can edit this out. So this is the fourth edition of The Sounds of People and Places, which is a book that I
Whoa,
discovered in grad school. And there
cool.
is an article on here, and I'll have to get this to you. This is called, I know it's in here, Why Seattle? An Examination of an Alternative Rock Culture Hearth.
Okay.
I'll get you a copy of that.
No, I'd love to check that out
Yeah.
because it never really, I hadn't really thought it over. It was just like I understood these general associations of certain genres and artistic, enterprises coming out of certain cities, but I hadn't really considered kind of the why.
Hmm.
But it is interesting, and I do wonder how the landscape plays in versus just the culture in the bars or like the different, because I imagine a lot of these artists shared similar stages locally, right, as they're coming up.
Oh,
Like
sure.
I,
I saw something on Threads or Instagram or something earlier today that someone posted an old ticket stub that they had from 1992, and it was, I don't know how much they paid. It was like $2 or something at this show, and it was the Red Hot Chili Peppers were the headliners with special guest Nirvana and Pearl Jam.
oh, that's what I mean. Okay, I was actually going to bring up the Chili Peppers because that's the band that got me into music, like opened me up to the possibility of like how much I could connect. Like I had appreciated music, but that was what opened me up to like I could have this deep and profound love for music and it can be like, you're listening to a song and it becomes the story of your life and you hear it, 10 years later and it brings you back to some season, some moment, some idea. Um, but I don't know, like I had a buddy who had actually seen the Chili Peppers and Pearl Jam in the same concert. And I was like, man, like I missed out on kind of the golden era, right? Like see them together in the same
Yeah,
show.
yeah. I've never seen either of them, but I've seen a number of people that well, we won't see again first because they're gone. But you
Yeah.
know,
I did get to actually no, 2 years ago, there was a new concert venue opened up in Franklin. It's like in an old quarry, so it's like a
yeah,
natural.
I've been there.
Oh, that's such a cool spot, like a natural kind of amphitheater with
Yeah,
just the way they carved it out and quarried it.
yeah,
Got to see Santana there.
cool.
And that was like, I mean, he is so much fun. I mean, he just brings out like 30 people and it was a big party. So
We saw
that's one where like he's getting older too. And I'm glad, I'm
yeah,
glad I could catch him when he's
saw
still got it.
Counting Crows there a couple years ago,
Nice.
and
Ah,
saw the Counting Crows at the Ryman a few years back, and that was an unbelievable because it's such a small venue, and
right.
that was one of the best shows I've ever been to.
Intimate concert and probably, I mean, up close. Yeah.
Yeah, hmm,
Oh, yeah. That's it. Well, I'd love for you to send me that article for
for
sure
sure.
because I am curious. And let me ask you. So, really quick, I just pulled up the numbers just out of curiosity. How many adults in the U.S. have MS? It's
Hmm.
estimated about 1 million people, and then around the world, it's about 3 million people.
Yep.
And that is scary to me because America's I don't remember the number. It's like 5% of the world's population, or maybe less, and yeah, we have like a third of the cases of MS, which is interesting and scary. But obviously, if it's like the European thing, like you would expect me to have higher numbers. Um, the cover of your book features a lovely acoustic guitar. So, like, how does music fit in with your book and story?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I started writing it, when all this time travel I got to do and going back and coming, all
Yeah,
these memories and recalling all these stories and stuff. I mean, music has been prominent with everything that I've done. So
right,
as I'm writing, you know, as I told you, I started telling my own story starts creeping in here. And my mom used to go to a lot of my gigs when I
right.
was in high school and early 20s and stuff like that. When I was in my early 20s when we did all the crazy, not so. This is why my generation is like awesome because all the dumb stuff that we did, there was no pictures of that.
Yeah, for sure. We could do that all peacefully and then
Right?
mature later.
There's no record, and then there might be a VHS tape out there somewhere, but unless someone converts that to digital, I mean, no one's ever going to
Right.
see something.
No one's got a
Right?
VCR, so
Right. So she came. I mean, I'm in my mid 20s, early mid 20s. We're doing the bar scene of playing, 10 to 2 shows.
right, right.
It's just crazy. And my mom would come to a lot of those shows. So I would write. I wrote a lot about her, coming to those things. And mind you, she's using a wheel on. Now she wasn't using a wheelchair right away, but she was coming in with a walker or a cane or something.
Right.
Sometimes she would need assistance, and it. She was there to support me, but looking back, I'm like, man, that had to have taken a lot of energy, and to be
Right.
able to actually do that. But just the music aspect of it, it's just that it's that's a part of who I am. So I couldn't get away from it, as far as its writing goes.
Yeah. I love the idea of her coming to your shows. I feel like in my world, like my mom's the only one who's read everything I've ever written. And I just like that's like kind of the unspoken thing around like among artists is like you kind of starting out, you have one fan, and it's usually your mom, and it's like that one person who's like, hey, your potential's infinite, and whatever you're up to, I got your back, and I'll support it, and
Yeah.
I'm very enthusiastic. But yeah, I imagine she never like complained about coming to the shows, or maybe never let on to like how hard it is to get there and stay up and go through 10 to 2 and all this.
She liked to have a good time. She wasn't there just for she liked to go out and party with everybody else.
Nice.
A lot of times it would come back to my place afterwards, and we lived in two different cities at the time, and not terribly far apart. But she'd end up spending the night, and just
Yeah.
But she wasn't there just for support. She was out having a good time.
She was having yeah. She have a good sense of humor.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We
Hey,
were we were really close.
I love that. And I am sorry for your loss too. That's Tina lost her mom a few years back, and that's something we all eventually go through. But I don't think it's anything anyone can understand until they go through it. So,
Yeah.
um, goodness. So, trying to think what else I want to ask you about your book here. I got to check it out. I got to read it. I love the human story. So most of the people I'm interviewing are, fiction authors. You've written the first nonfiction. Um, and I don't know, that's got to be a little, does that feel very like vulnerable to publish something that's like, hey, this is the real thing?
Yes, that's a great thing to bring up here,
Yeah.
because I have a colleague, one of the nursing colleagues of mine. She's not associated with the classes that I speak with, but
Hmm.
I told her a lot of things about this, and it's like, once it's out there, first of all, I wanted this thing out of my life for so long because it was just, I kept, and if you as a writer, I know you're going to understand this. I couldn't leave it alone. I kept rewriting and changing
Right.
and taking away and adding, and it's just like it just drove me. It was driving. It's like I want to finish this, no matter however I get it out. I just want it out of my life.
Yeah, get it off my shoulders or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and once I got it done and everything happened, I equate it to like being naked in the mall.
Right. I
That's what
mean,
I
very
felt like.
publicly, right? Like, yeah.
And once it became a reality that this was going to be published, I was a little bit more careful of some of the things I did. I mean, it's nothing bad, but I was just careful about some of the things that I just like, maybe I don't want to share that. Maybe I don't want to be so detailed about X, Y, and Z. Maybe I want to pull that, thing out here. But the names are real. The events are everything. There's a lot, of course, I left out because, well, a lot of it wasn't really relevant, but
Yeah.
stuff that wasn't pushing the narrative. And that's one of the things that my editor, she didn't really cut a lot, but there was just a few things. She goes, this is good. She goes, but it's not, there's no need for it to be in here. It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. It doesn't push the story forward, and it's
Exactly.
got to connect ultimately, right? So if it's too personal, it's like, I don't know. It's, like I talk about this with fiction writing, if I say Abraham Lincoln was born in a log cabin in Kentucky, like immediately people can't really relate unless, for the 12 people who were born in a, you know what I mean? But if you start a story with like, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it's like now suddenly, it is a story about you. You can connect with it. Like, it's not just about me. I mean, it's kind of about the human
Yeah.
adventure, right? But yeah, you're not wrong about that whole vulnerability. Like I imagine anyone who reads your book is gonna know you better than you will ever know them in all
Yeah.
likelihood. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a very difficult thing to get comfortable with. I mean, it's obviously it can't hurt you unless you, I mean, write something really crazy and follows you back to work or something. But that vulnerability can't really hurt you. But it is one of these things that like our instinct is like
Yeah.
tells us like, yeah, don't do it.
Well, and to go off of that too, prior to my, publishing this, I told very few people about my own MS.
Hmm.
I've been able to hide it really well. Um, and I know from my mother's experience and other people's that people treat you differently when they know something like that about you.
Interesting.
They just do. They treat you differently.
Even if like, hey, there's nothing outwardly.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And once I got this done and out, I'm like, well, there's no, I can't hide this any, long. So I became a, that part was actually liberating to me because
Hmm.
there's, I mean, some of my own personal symptoms. I mean, I have balance issues,
Okay.
and I can look like I'm walking around, half drunk in the afternoon without actually being.
Right.
So, and that's one thing that I've kind of, I don't want, I hate, I'm not going to use the word given into, but I've been using walking assistance lately within the
Hmm.
last maybe year or so, just because, I just feel a little bit more comfortable with it. And if I do
Yeah.
stumble on something, it's, oh, that makes sense, that kind of thing. But
You give yourself some grace, but also, yeah, because the falling thing, I mean, I don't know, it is scary. Like, I heard a story once of a musician who fell, and she was a pianist, and she was so concerned with her hands that she didn't protect her head. And I don't know. So, like, if it stops you from falling or something, that's
hmm
it's important. I do think though, like on this subject of like the vulnerability, I feel like no good deed or act of courage is wasted. Like people need courage. So like anyone else having this demonstration of courage, like doing a scary thing and doing it anyway, I feel like anyone who interacts with your book, that can only make them slightly better, slightly braver, in their own personal world, right? I mean, I that's my hope at least. Yeah.
hmm I well, I have no number of people with MS too, or people or know people with MS, and this goes for the nursing students as well. They
Mhm.
often asked if this would be something that would be beneficial to someone who was newly diagnosed. Or I said I think so. I said because ultimately it's like what my friend and former colleague grad school Dave Kaplan wrote. He says ultimately this is a positive book because right. I mean, my mother's.
And just smooth transition into part two because we got kicked out briefly.
Gotcha.
So,
No worries. So
yeah.
yeah, it was with some of the nursing students and other people that have known or know of people with MS. They asked, would this book help someone who was newly diagnosed, or would it be beneficial to someone dealing with possibly another type of disease or anything that they're the caregiver? And I'm like, I think absolutely because you're getting I I'm writing a firsthand experience of what my mother's situation was like and how it impacted my life.
Right.
But as far as the newly diagnosed, I said yeah because my experience with my mom's journey through MS, when I was when they told me that was what was wrong, whatever that I was diagnosed with it. I mean, it didn't really affect me that bad because I kind
Hmm.
of didn't know life without it. It was I know what to expect. This isn't something that's gonna kill you, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so in that sense, it's something as long as I take care of myself, and that's one of the things I tell people.
Mm.
Like you've got to keep moving. You've got to take care of yourself in terms of your diet, your exercise, sleep, everything like that. I mean,
Yeah. Just really be dialed in with nutrition and healthy habits. So you listed a couple things. So movement, like keeping the nerves firing to all these different, just keep everything in motion. Proper sleep, which I imagine has to do with recovery, immune system, like keeping everything kind of in balance. And sleep, I think we don't even know all the ways it works. We just know sleep is essential, but I think all the different functions we probably don't totally understand.
yeah.
In terms of like vitamins and stuff, we talked about vitamin D, but is there anything else you'd put on that list? Like,
For myself, I mean, I don't get along with dairy. It just doesn't. I
okay,
just don't feel good. But I mean, I'm not a cow. We shouldn't be. We're not cows. I mean, we're really not supposed to be consuming that
still
kind of
going
stuff.
with
But
the, we're not babies anymore yet.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, the biggest thing for me is exercise. If I don't work out on a regular basis, I feel like absolute garbage. I lose strength so quick. And
Interesting.
the great thing, and that's one of the things about my own experience that I like to share with people is When I was diagnosed, I got into physical therapy immediately. I asked my
Okay.
doctor to write me a script to go to PT.
Yeah.
That changed my life.
Just staying way ahead of it. Like, hey,
Yes. And I'd
yeah.
already had symptoms for years. I mean, I had my first symptoms when I was like around 26 years old.
Well,
Went away, never came back again until
right.
I would say early 40s, probably late 30s,
Okay.
early 40s is when I really started. It's like something's going. I can't. Was never a runner, but it's like, man, I can't run. I can't jog.
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah.
clumsy and just really tired really, really easily. That's the thing.
Interesting. That's definitely important information. I On a quick note with like nerves and exercise, there's a interesting tip I learned. So like for these hyper athletes, right? Like now they have, high tech ways to measure these things. But if you're like, okay, let's say you had a really powerful workout yesterday, you're lifting very heavy things, and you're like, should I do that again today? You clench your fists, and if you have trouble making a tight fist, it means like your nerves are a little bit exhausted, and that's like a good day to take a day off.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like your ability to send that signal is like, it's not as good today, and I'm more likely to hurt myself or something.
Yeah.
That's something I always try to keep in mind. And then I'm trying to like not make excuses. I'm like, God damn it. Okay. Got to work out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I, another thought I had while you were talking is like, I imagine back in the day before, like they really knew a lot about MS, it had to be hard to diagnose, right? Like this person is like, okay, I have numb fingertips and I can't see out of my left eye. And I imagine these doctors like scratching their heads like, are these things even related? I mean, what would possibly be doing both things?
Yeah. One of the early things that they used to do to diagnose people with MS, and this is
Hmm.
barbaric by today's standards, they called it the hot bath test.
Mm.
And if they would have a patient get into a hot bathtub, and if their symptoms were exacerbated after they got out, they were diagnosed with MS. And that's the truth with me. If I get in a sauna or a hot bath, I get up and I just everything is just awful.
Really? So like when you shower some, does it like have to be cold or just can't be too hot or like
It can't be too hot, but I usually take cold showers anyway because it just
it's
stimulates
great
you.
for you?
Yeah, they are really good for you.
Yeah. God, I can't stand it. I've been trying to talk Tina because I have like a cold plunge too. I've been trying to talk my wife into it for years, and she's like, "I don't do the cold. Get me out of the cold." Like I'm not doing that by any means.
Yeah,
But yeah, I believe in the whole cold shower, cold plunge. The benefits there, and especially the cold shower. It's free, doesn't cost you any extra time, any extra money, but you feel incredibly better. It actually also helps keep you in shape.
it
Interestingly,
does actually. It's really good
it's
for your immune system.
yeah, yeah. But I've noticed like there's so many benefits to it. But like I have noticed it's almost like you have a bank account for stress each day. And you can either use that account up consciously or you can let life get the best of you in small doses all the time.
Hmm.
But if you take a cold shower and you go through that extreme stress, when you get out, you're like, yeah, I don't have enough room to feel stressed out about whatever's going to come up. Like in traffic, someone cuts you off, you're like, okay. Like
Yep.
you just don't have it in you to be mad.
Yep. And it's
Yeah.
another thing just to get. I mean, not. I haven't gone in depth in with like Eastern type philosophies and stuff, even though
Mhm.
it's something I'm interested in. But
Right.
yoga and meditation are game changers. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, because the yoga obviously is helping with your breath, and if I don't, this is the stupid shit that we as humans do, stuff that we know. I can take 20 minutes and go through a basic yoga routine, and it'll completely change my day.
Right.
And I can also sit in front of the computer and watch 20 minutes of stupid guitar pedal videos that's just that I'm never gonna buy, that I don't need, and it's just like if you just did that, you know what I mean? It just move that energy and time over there.
No, you're not wrong. I think about this a lot because like I have so many things that I know would benefit me so tremendously. And yet I don't do them. There's not enough time in the day, and then you waste time doing silly things. But
Hmm.
I've never really got into yoga. Meditation, I big advocate for meditation. And I think anyone would benefit from, I mean, 5 minutes a day would probably change your life. Just being more conscious of what you're thinking, of like the patterns you run, your beliefs about the world, or just being more connected to your own body. And even just like a little bit of breath work training. And I think the key with breath work, in my opinion, is it's like the only bodily function that's both conscious and unconscious. So it's like this bridge between what you're aware of and then what you're unaware of. And it's like almost a way that you can start to kind of blur the line to like make an impact in your unconscious mind, which is like where they think, what do they say? 95% of our personality and thoughts and beliefs all are in this unconscious space. And then there's only 5% of us that's really making decisions. Everything's automatic. Your driving's automatic. So many of your routines, so many of your patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the meditation, but does that feel, you know, do you feel like a better connection like with your body and your health and everything, not just the mental health, but like
It just over, yeah. It's just a clearness of mind, and
right,
that's another thing that will make symptoms worse is stress. I mean, it. I mean that's related to everything. That's going to make everything worse. So if you just
right.
clear your mind and clear your thoughts and focus on that breath and get your body oxygenated like it's supposed to be, um,
Yeah.
everything as a whole is going to be better. Andrew Weil, Dr. Andrew Weil, if you're familiar
Hmm.
with him, he has a great
I know
book
the
called
name. Yeah.
it's just called Breathing,
Okay.
and he argues in this book that a lot of illnesses can be basically cured or remedied from proper breath technique.
I honestly believe that. I mean, it seems so like crazy with kind of the modern scientific mind. But to, the Ayurvedic people, the Eastern philosophers 4,000 years ago, it was just so obvious that like breath itself is life. Water is life. And it's like, if you don't have either, how can you possibly thrive and feel good and feel healthy?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we're too practical with, like we almost know so much that we're missing the big picture in a lot of things. Hey, so I'm going to let you go here in a minute,
Yeah, man.
but so your book is available on Amazon, but do you have a preferred place for people to purchase your book, whether it's, I mean, a Barnes and Noble or a local bookstore that is an online thing?
Sure. Locally, you can find it at the Spine in Smyrna, Duck
Nice.
River Books in Columbia, Tennessee, Landmark Booksellers in downtown Franklin, Tennessee. I
Nice.
believe that Barnes and Noble in Akron, Ohio, actually has copies because that's
Cool.
where my publisher is from, is University of Akron Press,
Yeah.
and I believe that they actually have hard copies there in Akron.
Nice.
Direct from me, you can do that. You can just go to my website. It's just stevemcclain.com.
Sweet.
Just about any other online booksellers, I think are out. I don't know where all it is actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And like most of the authors, it's like usually Amazon and stuff, but there are like the local bookstores who do have the online catalog. So there are ways to support, local bookshop or something.
Yeah,
I will put the link to your website in the description. You know, there's a chance based on, I mean, whatever I put in the description that someone who is recently diagnosed with MS might, see this. Is there, a contact form on your website if someone reaches out, wants to say thank you or has a question?
sure. There's a contact. There's my email address is on the contact page on my website, so
Nice.
you'll find it there.
Nice. And then, hey, is any of your music on Spotify or anywhere if I put a link?
Yep, it's all
Cool.
up there. If I have this stuff that I highlight, because I got a bunch of stuff out there, and it's
Yeah.
the music page on my website's what I prefer to be. There's other stuff
We've
out
all
there
got our favorites, right?
I'd rather forget about.
Yeah. All right, wonderful. Well, yeah, we'll steer people your way. I'll let you know when this episode's coming out, but I appreciate you making the time. This was cool. It was very informative.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
No, absolutely. I'm glad we could do this. And hey, let me ask you, you think you're going to write a second book at any point or?
I've been toying around with a number of things. I had an idea of doing something because I'm still interested in the place factor of MS and everything like that, and I
Right.
wanted to possibly write something that's focused on Northeast Ohio, and I wanted to just basically give like a history of a geographic sort of history of the disease in
Mm,
Northeast Ohio, and I wanted to actually interview maybe 10 or 12 people and tell their stories because as I
right.
said, there's everybody's different. So questionnaire of where do you live, where'd your parents come from, what's your ancestry, what access to social media or public transportation, how does that impact your life, and just so
Right.
that's a project I'm thinking about, but I just have to get the motivation to do it.
It's a big time commitment, but I like this, at the intersection of real human experiences, and then also like kind of a survey and a private kind of research endeavor that you're like, hey, maybe no one else is looking into this the way that I'm looking into it, or going from this angle, you know what I mean? Feels like a very worthy conversation to be had, and worthy endeavor for sure.
Yeah, I just have to kind of get myself to, you know,
It's tough. I mean, I'm always like torn in 10 directions, man. I'm like, I should be writing. I should be reading. Like, God, how many books should I read versus what I write? And like, I got a day job and I got the podcast, and I should probably take a cold plunge. And it's like, and then it's suddenly like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I gotta sleep at some point,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I just remember there was one thing I did want to mention earlier. So you were talking about the process of writing your book, and it was more like you didn't set out with this grandiose vision for like, oh, this book is going to be a bestseller, make me a millionaire. I do feel like the best art is just like this genuine expression of the soul, and it's not like right now I'm kind of redirecting my own writing into marketing. So I'm like, I need it to be a viable business if I'm going to really put this much time into it.
Mm-hmm.
And that definitely diminishes from like the pure artistic, you know what I mean? So I appreciate what you said about it. You're like, hey, it was almost started out with like you journaling or, just telling the story or getting her story on paper while it's still fresh, all the memories.
Yeah.
That's how you make profound art.
It was fun. As difficult as it was in portions, it was fun. And I'll tell you the honest truth of what happened here.
Yeah.
I would spend, the quote that's misattributed to Hemingway about write drunk and edit sober. He didn't actually say that.
Wasn't Hemingway?
It wasn't. No, I don't know who said it, but anyway, I would, I don't know, 2-3 drinks in and just go to town of an evening,
just playing, reminiscing,
absolutely, and just write and write and write and go back down these historical wormholes in my youth, and then the next day I'd reread this stuff. I'm like, this is pretty good, except I gotta edit the crap out of it because I'm drunk reading it. But it worked. It really worked because I wouldn't. It wouldn't have came out in that stream of consciousness had I been sitting in the coffee shop.
Right, putting this pressure on yourself and there's people around you, and you're like, okay, we're very systematic versus like we're just gonna play, we're gonna flow. And I'm sure it came out much more like a celebration of life than like this was a difficult story. It was more like this is a beautiful story about just mom and son journey through life, the difficulties, perseverance, all this kind of thing. Yeah. Well, I'm going to read your book coming up here, and I'm going to reach out to you when I do. But if you do take on another, writing project, definitely keep me posted. We'll get you back on here. And
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. No, this was cool, though. I appreciate you making the time for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, absolutely, man. Keep me posted what's going on with it and everything. And I thank you again so much. And I will get you a copy of this Seattle article.
Yeah, I'm curious because it's like a whole world I haven't explored yet.
Yeah. You might, I mean, if you're interested in music, you might want to check these out. You can probably find one pretty cheap. It's called
Not bad. I'm sure that would actually be probably a great gift for my wife. She'd probably get like a lot out of that. Yeah.
So George Carney, the editor of this, he got in trouble a few years back for plagiarism. So
no kidding.
I think he kind of disappeared. But George Carney was like the original music geography guy who started this stuff back in the late 60s.
Interesting.
Believe it or not, music and geography was not something that was taken seriously up until the mid 1960s or so.
I mean, it's like if you say music and geography, I would almost think back more like ancient cultures, right? Like the origin of different instruments and these kind of cultural songs that have similarities. And you're like, I wonder if there's some older culture they both came from or something. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that could be state by state. Like in the American story. I mean, in the Canadian story. I like all these different, people.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there for sure, but whole world I haven't explored yet.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Hey, well, we will talk soon. But yeah, it'll probably this episode, if you're watching this, probably Friday or Saturday.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I got a mailing list, and I just want to send out, just give them a heads up whenever this is available.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay.
With the link, so that way once it's up, I can send that out.
Yeah, so usually, and I'll hit pause and we'll chat for a second here. But I appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.